Do everything the way that we say, and then you'll realize that it was right.
Let the cognitive dissonance kick in, and you'll see what we're talking about.
Wouldn't you like to come back as a lower life form? Not really.
Because I like to play hide and seek, and only show myself to idiots. Hello and welcome to the Church of Awesome.
The church to end all churches.
We'd like to thank you for joining our services today. I will be conducting today. I am Demi-Pope Chris. Presiding is Cardinal Imam Spencer, son of Hagar.
Peace be upon him.
Also joining us is the Archangel Michael.
Yeah.
And Bill. Our topic today is...
Is there a chance that we are wrong?
Well, is there?
Well,
No,
the
there's
short
not.
answer is, of course there is. Let's start talking about the scale of belief. The Richard Dawkins scale of belief, basically. You can find it in the God Delusion, and I pretty much think of it as like the pH scale, where you have 1 is a very strong acid and 14 is a very strong base, right? Right?
Yeah.
I didn't make that up? Okay, good. So, same thing, but with theism versus atheism. It's on a scale of 1 to 7, so it's half that. So basically you have 1 is a zealot theist, one who absolutely believes in God, who would kill you because he believes in God, and it's absolutely a sure thing, and I live my life according to the knowledge that he is real and all of that. Then you'll have like a 2, which is like, I'm fairly confident that there is a God, and I live life by that. Well, if you go to all the way to the other end on a 7, that would be basically a zealot atheist. That's someone who is going out for a destructive purpose and saying there is no God and fuck you all. And, you know, the classic, the angry atheist kind of a thing.
The characterization of...
Yeah, they're the caricature that we try and to avoid being, because that kind of person, a number 7, has no credibility, because there's always going to be the possibility of new evidence coming in, right? If you're rational, you're going to say, yes, there is going to be more evidence that comes in, and we're going to see perhaps, you know, our way of thinking is going to be changed a bit. But you have the blinders on if you're a full-blown 7 zealot. Anytime really I say the word zealot, that means you're fucking crazy. And
So 1s and 7s are
equally crazy.
Yeah.
They're equally useless and equally destructive. So I would place myself at a 6, where it's a very strong confidence that there is no God. I live my life as if there is no God, because overwhelming evidence has come together and shown me that, I mean, certainly anything that we see now in religion is certainly man-made. And even the concept of a God existing is awful and terrifying and implausible and ridiculous and just gross. So... You know, I've been thinking about that question. Is there a chance that we are wrong, that we have been led astray? And the answer is, of course, yes, unless you're a crazy zealot idiot. I was thinking, okay, well, what would it take to be convinced that there's a God is one question I'd like to talk about. But the other thing...
Which is a good question. It's always a question that you should consider. It's like, what... Because if you're having a debate with somebody, and if you ask them, what would it take to change your mind about this, and they say nothing... then why are you debating if there's...
It's dishonest. Immediately you can tell that they're not honest seekers of truth.
Yeah, well, and it's the same, it goes both ways, too, because if nothing will change your mind, then you're not arguing from an honest position either.
Absolutely.
Yup.
So what would it take to change your mind?
To change my mind, to say there is a God, it would probably take... seeing and feeling God for myself, like an actual meeting where I see him face to face, and maybe
even that wouldn't do it for me, because
well, I need some questions answered. I need a lot of questions answered.
Well, for me, it would take the preponderance of the evidence would have to show it. It's not just one single thing. A lot of times Christians will say it's just like, well, when you see God, or they'll talk about, you know, spiritual experiences that they had, that one thing turned them all around. It's like, it can't just be one thing. It has to be, you know, the collection of everything together has to demonstrate that it's the most probable conclusion.
Yeah, I mean the phrase preponderance of the evidence, means more than 51%, that it's more likely than not that there is a God. Yeah, if God and divinity and anything could even get near that, yeah, it would start swaying my way.
Yeah, because just based on my experience, it's nowhere near that. Everything that people bring up has a more rational explanation. But if there were all of a sudden all of these things that didn't have more rational explanations, then you would have to conclude that, to be intellectually honest, you'd have to say, okay, then this is now more likely than not.
Yeah, if you were to start seeing the fossil record showing things like that this group was here and then all of a sudden magically became this completely different, unrelated thing, and then that happened maybe a couple of times ago, okay. Well, first, if we can eliminate the fact that maybe we're digging in the wrong place, or if
you have to eliminate, just like in science, you have to eliminate all other possible conclusions. So if there's a more likely conclusion, which is almost any conclusion you could come up with,
yeah,
but you'd have to eliminate all of them before you could actually settle on one that was more superstitious or one that was more supernatural.
Which brings me to my next topic is apologetics. That is the original term. It comes from Greek, and really it means literally just to speak in defense of something. The connotation now, and certainly one that I kind of more agree with, is apologetics is when you're speaking in defense of a position that has no support, and that you are basically, by definition, being dishonest and saying, well, I know it looks completely like evolution happened, but really the thing is that God made rainbows and had a guy build a boat and pulled all these species out of his ass. And, I mean, the word...
Well, apologetics just means speaking in defense of.
Right. I wanted to read a little...
So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have no actual defense. It's just... you're speaking in defense of a position, but you've already made your decision. You're speaking in defense of it. You're defending a position, which means you're not seeking a conclusion. You have your conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, the original term, apologia, was, in the old Greek legal system, you would have the categoria, which is basically like the prosecution case in chief, the prosecution saying their thing, and then the basically prosecution or the defense rebuttal is the apologia, the one who's speaking in defense. So you hear each side, and then the trier of law, trier of fact, and all that, take it from there. So the word itself doesn't necessarily mean I'm defending bullshit, but the way that it's used now, like every time I see it, is, well, the apologetics on the Genesis story is, and the apologetics on it's always something stupid.
Yeah, you don't really have people like apologetics for evolution. You don't find that.
You don't need that.
Yeah, because it's just...
Exactly. It's just like what we said before. If you have facts and evidence, you don't need faith. If you have support for your position, you don't need apologetics.
Yeah, you don't need to defend a position that stands on its own.
Exactly. It always sounds to me like this backdoor bullshit after the fact justification of something stupid.
So what are some typical apologetic positions?
Oh, one of them is, hey, so that story that you heard about Jesus also happens to be the same story that you heard about Mithra, the son of Horus, Dionysus, and a bunch of other people. Well, and they proceeded by thousands of years. Well, you see, the devil is so crafty that he was able to plagiarize that by anticipation. He knew that people were looking for this thing, and so he decided to make these types and shadows of the things, yes, to counterfeit and to fool the elect of God. Which, do you see any problems with that?
A lot of them.
And them being...
Well, it's another thing where it's what's more likely, and these things tend to go along cultural lines. You can say like, well, and just the fact that the stories will even change over time. You can actually trace them through history, meeting each other and adapting to each other. So it's you see them evolving along lines that we already understand. So the injection of this devil character is totally needless. You don't need to have... We have an adequate explanation already for that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's not really evidence of anything.
No, yeah, certainly not. Now, like if we're going to be won over by the other side, we're going to have to accept just a lot of things. And here's some more apologetics that I'm a big fan of, of which I'm a big fan, to say it more correctly. Or, well, see, you just don't get it because you weren't praying right. So it's clearly, you can see how this is all your fault. That if you had done the proper praying and specifically asked a particular verse from a particular God the question, he would have answered it. And you would be a believer. He would give you that gift of the Holy Spirit, and you would be able to understand all of the mysteries.
It's like, well, I talked to Mr. Perfect Space God, and then he told me this thing. So if he's not telling you, then you're doing something wrong.
You just happen to tell me this thing that benefits me a whole bunch. And you're obviously an idiot if you don't get the same answer, because I need all your money. So gimme.
And of course, as always, if you don't agree with me, you are wrong.
Yes.
Well, it's like if you have such supreme confidence in your own position, then you kind of have to have that, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that brings me to my next one. These are mysteries. You don't need to know these things. You don't have to understand how billions of species can fit inside a small boat no bigger than a football field. Like, these things aren't necessary for your salvation.
Well, that's just God's ways are higher than our ways. Or are you God? Can you understand these things? You're like,
You don't need to know why in 1978 God changed his mind about black people.
It's like, oh, that reminds me of some kind of logical fallacy called special pleading. Can't help but notice those things really just stand out.
Well, it's weird that they would say just like, well, this argument that you brought up, let's just put that on the shelf and not talk about it. Why? Because it's damaging to my case.
Yes. And I don't have a good answer for that.
Oh, here's one I like. We were too prideful. The only the humble man gets the gift of God. What's that?
The penitent man.
The penitent man will pass.
Penitent man.
Penitent man kneels before God.
Penitent.
It's like, okay, well, only the people. If by
Penitent man.
humble.
Penitent man kneels before God.
Yes.
Penitent man.
Fuck you so hard.
I just really like that movie.
Yeah. If by humble you mean don't ever ask questions, then yes, I was not humble.
Because you were sure you have it all right.
Well, yeah,
right.
I don't think humility entails being entrenched in a position.
Yeah, I always understood humility to mean knowing your place. As in, if you have a leader who is rightfully in charge of you, you are obedient to that leader. But when you are in charge, you take charge and you take command and you direct as benevolently as you can. That would be humility.
Or if you're a woman, you get in the kitchen.
If you're
Make
talking,
some pies and babies.
If you're talking out of place,
Not
or
pie babies, though.
you're being disrespectful to a superior officer, yes, that's not humble. It's usually your pride that makes you say, no, I know better than you because I'm smart or whatever. No, that person's in charge of you generally for a reason, and you do your damn job and shut up. Now, when you're in charge, on the other hand, don't be a weenus, take command, do your job, and do it correctly. And when someone is out of line, you tell them. That's not prideful to tell someone who is your subordinate to do his job correctly. That is okay.
It was just your responsibility to do so.
Right. When you act outside of that, that's when you're being prideful. That's when you're being a dick. And the only way that they can salvage that is, well, it's your place to be below God, right? So you are the subordinate, he is a superior, and you're not allowed to act outside of what he says. And what he says, of course, is this very dictatorial asshole, thou shouts, and a series of those.
Well, and we also have a disagreement on what the place is. Because if you're saying like, oh, well, we're sons of God, and, we're his chosen people, then that puts you on a higher plane than, you say above the animals, above, the survivability of the earth.
Above black people.
Yeah, and just above all sorts of stuff.
Have you ever covered why God's racist?
I'm sure we'll get to that.
I don't think we have.
Yeah.
That one out of context might be a little bit...
But if you don't believe in this God, then you realize our place as just these absolute specks in this giant cosmos that we're alive almost by accident. It seems like a more humbling position. If I read the Bible and then I watch Carl Sagan's The Cosmos, I feel the cosmos is a little bit more humble in its approach to what we are as human beings.
Certainly. We're very ethnocentric when we're talking about religions. Just, I'm a child of God. I can become like God, or I am above all these terrible sinners who just don't get what I get.
Well, see, because I talked to God and he said that I'm special and that I'm awesome. So
here's one. Remember a few episodes back when I said, let's not pretend that I left the church because I stopped going to church on Sunday? Remember that comment? Well, this basically is in line with that. Lost the spirit because we weren't obeying the rules. You've heard this one before. It's only those who are completely obeying have the spirit of the Lord. Those who aren't, the spirit of contention is of the devil, right? Those who aren't arguing or causing any problems. Those that are just kind of moving like droids and doing all the things that they're supposed to in their pre-programmed bullshit lives. Those people get it. Those that understand the sense of the sacred and who are allowed to have access to the doctrines of salvation and all that shit. But if you are too prideful and you're not following the rules without question, then you're just not going to get it. It's the same nonsense that you hear with he who has ears, let him hear. He who has eyes, let him see. And then they tell some really obvious allegory that any moron can put two and two together. I'm like, no, I didn't need a spirit personage to tell me that the tree represents Israel. All I needed was
a basic understanding of the English language.
Yeah. An understanding of similes and metaphors is what you need. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's just it's where they always say, do everything the way that we say, and then you'll realize that it was right.
Yes.
By the time it's too late, then you'll realize.
Let the cognitive dissonance kick in, and you'll see what we're talking about. Well, and back to that whole, if you don't believe, then you're sinning. It's just a way for them to, defame the character of anybody in the out group, right? Instead
because the very existence of the out group is threatening to them.
Yes.
So our very existence. Which is why we're standing out in front of everybody saying, hello, here we are.
All right. I got, specifically Book of
I
Abraham.
wanted to talk about one of the, because you said if you're obeying all the rules, if you're sinning, then you won't get it. And then they have all of these, what they define as a sin is basically anything that you could possibly do. So they make the rules impossible to attain so that everybody's guilty.
Yes.
It's kind of the Emperor's New Clothes thing. So you're like, oh no, I feel it, because if I didn't feel it, that would mean that I was sinning in some way, and I'm not a sinner. So yeah, I got it.
Is that a tautology?
Yes.
Okay. Yay! Getting specifically, I don't want to go too deep into this, but remember the Book of Abraham from the Mormon Book of Scripture that was supposedly translated from plates of papyri that...
Did we ever... plates of papyri?
I'm sorry. Scrolls.
Papyri.
Scrolls.
That's what papyrus
We have not
comes in.
talked about this yet, no.
Okay.
That the Mormon founder, Joseph Smith, found, in quotes, the scrolls that
He
were...
bought them, didn't he?
Yeah, you bought them.
Yeah.
They bought a whole bunch of old Egyptian scrolls.
Relics and stuff
and
like
they,
that.
they went through all of them, and lo and behold, some of these were actually written by Abraham. And since I'm magical and have these rocks and can look into a hat and divine things about them, I can translate this Egyptian that at the time nobody thought would ever be translated. And so yeah, he said,
well, this is the Book of Abraham. It's his journeyings and all his story while he was in Egypt. There's so many reasons why the story is retarded, but I'm going to go straight to the point. Is that in the future, after this book was translated and printed and published, they thought they lost the source documents, the original scrolls from which he translated, in quotes again. And then
conveniently.
Well, yeah, exactly. When they turned up about 100 years later, because they thought it was lost, they found them and were able to match markings from the thing.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
basically, anyone can look at these and tell, obviously, these are the source documents to this thing. And they say, of course, nothing about Abraham. They're common funerary texts. It's just ancient Egyptian stuff like you would expect on ancient papyrus.
Yeah.
And the apologetics on this is, well, they're different, still undiscovered scrolls that had all these things. Those aren't the right ones. It's the exact same. Well, this is obviously this way. No, it isn't. It's the not-on defense. It's really all it is.
Well, that's the only defense that you could really make, because if you're entrenched in this belief, you have to believe that these either aren't them, or that translate doesn't mean what you thought it meant.
Or that the entirety of the scientific community is translating Egyptian wrong.
Yes.
Or there's a conspiracy
Yes.
that they've
All of these scientists everywhere across the world that have all looked at these documents.
independently translated them the same way.
Yes.
Because the devil told them to.
Yes, the devil's also powerful enough to form such a wide conspiracy. Fucking idiots. It's completely ridiculous. And like, yeah, just always argue. What was it? When you're defending an indefensible position, just say the facts are wrong. I love that. One of my other favorites is God erased all archaeological data from America or from wherever.
Yeah.
From the Exodus.
Yeah. it's here to test us.
Yeah.
Just like how we get
That's why you put the dinosaur bones there.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Exactly.
fossils are here just to test our faith.
I actually saw a poster with a T-Rex with a shovel,
Yes.
like burying dinosaur bones.
No, what it was something like the dinosaurs all got sick and died, and they were like digging. Yeah, and it was great because there was a T-Rex with a shovel, and you're like, if a T-Rex is holding a shovel, it wouldn't reach the ground.
He has like this little girly arms. There's no way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're so massively powerful. Like, T-Rex arms will kill us, but
Yeah.
compared to the size of the rest of his body, they're practically vestigial at that
Yeah.
point.
But yeah, I would prefer not to believe in a God that likes to just play jokes on people.
Yeah, that practical jokes.
I like to make it look as if I weren't here, and then punish people for not believing that I was here. You know?
Yeah, I'm going to lead every chain of evidence is going to lead you to I'm not really here. Even for the diligent, honest seekers of truth, they're going to really think and be convinced that I'm not here because I'm a dick.
Yeah, because I like to play hide and seek, and only show myself to idiots.
Yeah, because faith is more convincing than evidence. Really? I mean, I'd love someone to explain that to me, because it was always, and the way it was explained to me, get this, was, well, faith is actually stronger than evidence, because if we were to just see God, I guess we'd be somehow like less impressed with him, and then we'd forget him easier because he's just some dude I met. Yeah, I met the milkman, and yeah, he's a nice guy and all that stuff, and then I go away and forget about him. It was the idea that there is, I guess, this mystery surrounding the character.
That's the way that our minds work. That we can't just be shown things. We have to have some sort of suspense.
Well, yeah, it's like when you meet someone famous and they turn out to be a dick, I guess.
I like the legend of
Yeah.
Tom Cruise more than the
Yeah,
actual-
when you meet him, he's insane.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't have to meet him to know he's insane.
You can't be for sure.
No, I'm sure.
Don't be a Tom Cruise zealot.
I'm a number 7 on that one.
Basically, to be swayed back to believing status, we have to accept just every stupid shit that I just said and a whole lot more. You have to just go. It gets really all about suspending that critical thinking. It's just, well, maybe it is better as a mystery. Maybe I don't need to know these things. Maybe I should stop being curious, and maybe I should just not look to science for answers.
Well, and even that's I don't think I could be convinced of that, because that's the only, it's like, if we were to believe that this is true because we're not good at analyzing data at all, it's basically what you're saying. It's just like, all the facts are wrong because you're just not seeing them right. Because if you have to accept that, then you have to accept everything that anyone tells you. It isn't just limited to this one proposition of this God existing. So you have to use your critical faculties to arrive at the conclusions. If you dismiss your critical faculties, then you lose your ability to arrive at conclusions. You just are this blindly accepting everything machine. So we'd have to arrive at those conclusions the same way that we arrived at the conclusions that we're at right now. So the evidence would have to point to it.
I like that. I like the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's like the way you drink.
Yes. I am communing with the spirit of Clynelish 14. It's a Highland. It's a very all-aroundy kind of Scotch. 14 years, so it's got a good, it's in its teenage years, so it's a bit rebellious.
Is it racist if I said they all look alike? Like that looks very similar to other things.
Well, Spencer doesn't look like mine.
No.
No, I'm drinking Glendronach 12-year Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. It's actually from Aberdeenshire in the Spey Valley. And this is awesome. It's like a deep, what Ralphie would call probably an amber +2.
Yeah, it's just
And
really
it's
dark.
no non-chill filtered, no color added. Aged in Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry casks. Just bought this bottle yesterday, and
It's very sherry.
We've put a dent in it.
yeah, we put a pretty good dent in it. I'm just still getting to know it a little bit, but man,
It's very
incredible.
dark, very rich.
Yeah, it's kind of in the same ballpark as Aberlour, but not quite so gasoline alcoholic as like the Aubenard,
Mm-hmm.
and even more sherry if you can believe
Mm-hmm.
it. So
What does sherry mean? Like, what
it's
is
a type of wine.
So when you say it's more sherry, that means what exactly?
It's taken on more of the sherry characteristics from the casks it was in. It's a little whiskey, Scotch whiskey 101.
Mm-hmm.
They're all Scotch whiskey is aged in previously used barrels. They don't use new casks. They use used casks. And generally, it's either from sherry, wine from Spain, or
Bourbon
from
America.
America. Yes, Kentucky specifically. Sometimes they'll use port or other things like that. Cognac.
Rum,
I've seen
something
use
like
rum
that.
casks, but the two big ones are sherry and bourbon. Mostly the Spey ones are sherry. Mostly the others are not. To be totally overgeneralizing there.
But yeah, so this one's got a lot of the sherry characteristics, so it's really,
Yeah.
it gets kind of that fruitiness and just rich kind
Yeah,
of
it's kind of the dry fruit, raisins, prune.
That's what you're tasting in yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm communing with the same
The
thing,
same
by
thing,
the way.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so back on topic.
Okay. The next thing I want to talk about was Pascal's wager. Are we all familiar with that?
Yes, but cover it for our listeners who may not know.
Okay. I'm going to read the little dealie from Wikipedia because I thought it was pretty good. Pascal's wager or Pascal's gambit. I didn't know it was called that. That's a cooler name. I don't know why it's not called that. Is a suggestion
Because nobody
posed-
knows what Gambit means. They just think he's the
One
guy
of
from
the
X-Men.
X-Men.
All right, that's what it means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of
Pascal, X-Men.
I'm just sort of assuming that Pascal throws electronically charged cards. Anyway, Pascal's wager is a suggestion posed by the French philosopher, yada, 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 Blaise Pascal, that even if the existence of God cannot be determined through reason, a rational person should wager as though God exists, because living life accordingly has everything to gain and nothing to lose. See any problems with that, Mr. Demi Pope?
Well, the nothing to lose,
Yeah.
because if you are investing a lot of time and a lot of your energy into the belief of this God, if it were the kind of God that you can just kind of passively believe in and not change anything else about your life, then that would be true. But it would also be true for any other God that you happen to bring up. Like,
There's one big important overlying thing that Dawkins addresses in his book, The God Delusion, which everyone should read, is it's kind of assuming that there's a choice that you can believe or not. That you just go, I choose to believe, when really you can't. It's not like it's not something you can just turn on and off. It's because it's something that's based on irrational feelings to begin with, and to assign an on and off switch to something so ethereal is kind of stupid.
Yeah, the usual counterexample of that is, well, if this God knows everything, then he knows that I'm just believing in him as a wager.
Yeah.
So, and if that's okay with him, then what kind of a God is that? And if it's not okay with him, then I'm just screwed either way.
Yeah, and of course the other thing Dawkins said was, if you're just obeying the rules just to hedge your bets, then really how virtuous are you? How valuable to him could you possibly be if you're just this useless drone? You're like a straw man.
That's why when I first left religion behind, I decided that I was just going to live my life in such a way that if God could condemn me for it, then he would just be a huge dick.
Explain.
Well, if I go around and I'm just a nice guy and I don't do anything dishonorable, just of my own, just because I thought that it was the thing to do, then how could God blame me for that? Compared to people that are doing the right thing out of fear of being reprimanded. If I'm doing it out of no fear at all, just to be a decent person, then
Isn't that more
then
virtuous?
isn't that even better? Isn't that more virtuous than people who are doing it because they believe in God?
There's submitting because of the fear. It's not really virtue. It's
fear.
fear of the whip. It's like saying, "Oh, isn't he such a great worker, my slave?" I beat him, and then he just goes to work. It's just
It's proof
he's
the
such a
system
great
works.
hard worker.
He must really love me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, can I point out some really asshole zealot thing I used to do, like a point of view that I had that I just got reminded of right now?
Sure.
I used to think, and it's kind of hard to describe, is basically, here's what I would say. If I heard this conversation as a believer, it's like, well, it really sounds like they're just sort of talking in these fancy philosophies to kind of explain away the guilt that they feel because they're obviously wrong. Because you're forced to overthink things and just say, well, it's okay that I'm doing this because, no, just shut up and obey. Yeah. That's the rule. That's what we were asked to do. And who am I to judge? That's basically from the point of view of a stupid zealot asshole that I was. And for no reason.
Now you just got rid of the zealot part.
Well, yeah, because you got, because you waxed so eloquent on that. To me, it reminded me of something I would have complained about. Like, wow.
Well, there's like, to save myself from having to think about what he said, I'm just going to brand it elitist. Yeah.
Exactly. That is perfect. Wait, did you just imply I was some kind of asshole? I'm an arch dick.
No, he said stupid asshole.
Technically, you said stupid asshole.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing to lose, really. Didn't we do a whole episode on that? What's the harm?
Yeah.
Well, and the everything to gain also. It's like, what is there really to gain? Okay, eternal life.
It's a big celestial birthday cake.
I mean, this comes down to like Christian heaven. Doesn't really sound all that appealing to me. Right? It's an eternity of servitude. Right? Essentially, you're saying, yeah, I want to be your slave forever and ever.
At least in hell, you can
Amen.
say "fuck you" to the devil.
That's right.
Depending on theology, because there's some like you can get reincarnated, which never appealed to me. Whenever I hear someone talking about reincarnation, my first question is, what the hell is the point of that, and what's the point in believing that?
Wouldn't you like to come back as like a house cat or something?
No, I really don't. I would not
cow.
want that. Wouldn't you like to come back as a lower life form? Not really. One that doesn't have higher functioning brains.
Well, that's why you got to be good, so you can come back as a higher life form.
Yeah, and you're earning like these, Mario tokens,
Brownie points.
Well,
certainly that appeals to me more than Christian heaven, because at least you come back here and you have a different set of circumstances, and you get to, it's the trial of life that you get. You have problems, you overcome problems,
like a defending your life sort of a way. You mean?
Yeah, that you're learning and gaining experience forever, and that's kind of. That is somewhat
nice.
appealing. Yeah, compared to you reach a maximum level and then you just stop leveling.
Yeah.
It's like playing it's like reaching max level in World of Warcraft, and no matter how many things you kill, you don't get any. There's no benefit from it.
So yeah, it's like World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
This is like killing boars in the forest.
exactly. You're grinding, but there's nothing to be gotten.
If you are someone who is to be trusted and to be respected, if you get the satisfying proofs, then you have to go back. You have to apply what you know. Otherwise, you're just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
If you're like a person arguing for creationism and you get a chance to, I don't know, use a fucking Google search and look at all the amazing amount of evidence for evolution, and you say no, well it's no, or worse yet, I get that makes sense, but no, I like the God rainbow theory better.
Yeah.
And you're a piece of shit.
Well, that gets into the cognitive dissonance thing. That we'll do a whole episode on that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. But I guess it's once that cognitive dissonance is gone, once there is no doubt, you find out. Like for us, if we were to meet God face to face and he was able to explain everything, satisfactorily answer all of my questions, like why he hides himself and why he set up an incredibly stupid world, and did it multiple times to a point where I accepted it as reality, then yeah, I would be bound by my own honor and integrity to go back and do as I'm told, I guess.
Yeah.
And someone who is a number 7 on the scale would not do that. Is the same kind of zealot asshole who won't accept evolution.
Well, and I think some people, because the situation that you've outlined here of God coming and being able to explain everything satisfactorily, I think people they'll act like 7s even though they're 6s. Mm-hmm. So
because it can be a very passion provoking thing. It's like it's very irritating because we're still being kept down. We are still mistrusted for no goddamn reason. We're constantly being punished for being people who are actually being honest seekers of truth. We're being honest in a way that they aren't, and we're just doing our own due diligence and using the brains that were provided us by our creators.
I remember feeling that when I was running into all this apologetic stuff that said just don't think about it, because that's what a lot of it says.
Oh yeah.
And I always thought, if God created this intellect, surely he thinks me questioning him is a compliment, because he's given me the power to question him and analyze him or her. And
come on, really?
okay, him. And if you're just blind, if he gives you a gift and you don't use it, isn't that more of an offense?
Yeah.
Let's get ready to rage with our fatwas of the week. My fatwa this week is on light beer. Light beer tastes like piss, and it's horrible. But most places you go, it's all they've got.
What does piss taste like?
Yeah.
I've never tried.
How do you know?
You should try it sometime. It tastes like Bud Light.
Okay. I know what that tastes like, so yeah, no thanks. I'll have none of that.
Yeah, so anywhere you go to a pizza place and it's like, hey, what do you got? Oh, we got Bud Light, Miller Light, Coors Light. And that's it. You're like, what the fuck? Why all light beer, nothing with any flavor?
Yeah, it's funny. I was at a party a couple months ago and incredibly drunk, and I tried a Miller High Life and went, hey, actually, this ain't bad. Like, all right.
Yeah,
and then
Miller
I
High
tried it
Life's
again
alright.
sober, and it was horrible.
Well, Miller High Life is the lightest beer that I can drink.
It's the least worst.
Yeah.
Well, because it's not light beer. It's still 5% alcohol.
Yeah, it's
still
not
full
light.
flavored. It's just
But
it's
Miller
a,
Lite.
It's a Pilsner style
Yeah.
lager, which is very light in flavor. What these American beer companies did was they took a Pilsner style lager and then went, this isn't light enough. Let's water that down.
Yeah, and it just tastes like if you put ice in a lager and then left it on the counter for a while.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely horrible. And we as Americans, we owe it to the founding fathers, like Samuel Adams. Mm-hmm. Oh, and there's the Sam Adams Light, which just
It's a waste of
it
space.
hurts my heart that Sam Adams would make a light beer.
Yeah, and they try and sell it like, oh, but this is a really good light beer. It's way better than all the other light beers. And it's just apologetics for this beer tastes like shit.
Yeah, it's like we've made the lesser of all evils.
High five. That was excellent.
I'm gonna declare jihad on working on Saturday. So yeah, yesterday, Saturday, or in 5 days ago, Saturday, if you're downloading this on a Thursday, I was asked by my boss we're gonna need you to go ahead and come in on Saturday. Yeah, that'd be great. And I don't have a problem with working on a Saturday. The problem I have is twofold. One, my boss always waits until like 1 o'clock Friday afternoon. It's like, you couldn't ask on Wednesday. He knew on Wednesday, oh, I'm going to need the guys to come in Saturday. Did he? No. I'm going to wait till Friday afternoon so I could just totally fuck everybody's plans for Friday night. Secondly, this is where it really pisses me off. It's not like it isn't stuff I could just do during my regular time next week. But no, I got to come in and lose my Saturday so that I can be less productive on Monday. I just don't get it. I don't know why I had to lose half my weekend for no goddamn reason.
Yeah, because a stupid Lumberg. Yeah.
So this week I will be declaring jihad on the idiotic and unrealistic portrayal of firearms in television and movies. This drives me crazy because I actually worked at a shooting range and prepared to go into law enforcement. So I did a lot of studying on different types and makes and models and functions of firearms. So it's ruined. I mean, almost any of the old James Bond movies. Really, anytime you see a gun in a TV show or movies, you virtually guarantee they get at least two things wrong. To give you an idea, let's see. The most common one that I see is the fact that the gun never runs out of ammo. Okay. A semi-automatic weapon, we'll say handgun, a pistol like a Beretta M9 or 1911. It doesn't, or you usually see Glocks more these days because they're the cool-looking cylinder. Or
They just look cool.
yeah, they're cool. They keep on firing. Now, what happens in a proper semi-automatic is that they're going to have what's called a magazine. It's what stores the bullets, and you put it into the handle of the gun, and you shoot. Now, when that thing empties, and it will empty, I promise you, after you discharge several rounds, depending on the kind, 10 to 15 or whatever, you're... what's going to happen is that the slide is going to lock back. And you have to replace the magazine. It's not a clip, by the way. A clip is something entirely different. A magazine is part of the gun. Clip? A clip is just a bundle of bullets. In the old M1 Garand rifles, you would have 6 bullets that are put together by this little horse pin. Basically. Yes, and you put it in there. You pull. You discharge all the rounds. You shoot it, and the thing pops out. The little thing,
you throw it away.
And you can, I guess, pick them up. But if you're in the middle of a fucking battle, you're not gonna I need to save all my hair clips. No. And a magazine is part of the gun, without which the gun will not function. You put the bullets in there, and bam, you can't fire the gun unless there's a magazine in there. For the most part, you could, if you have one in the chamber, and there's things you could do. Yeah. But generally, no. But also, guns have recoil. You know why? Because it's a little tiny controlled explosion inside that little piece of metal you have. So
do we need to talk about Newton's laws?
Yeah. If you don't understand those things,
equal and opposite forces.
Well, and the fact that they never have the sound of the gun that's being fired.
I'll get there. Oh, there are plenty of things they get just dead wrong. Another thing that bothers me. Okay, yeah, so the slide almost never locks back. I think I've seen it once in an episode of 24 ever. That on TV or movies that where they're done firing, the magazine's empty, then they drop it, and the slide gets locked back. He loads, and ka-chow. Very rarely do you ever see that. Sometimes, I think the new Die Hard movie did a semi-decent job with that. But yeah, everyone holds the gun completely wrong. Not just like, here's another way of doing it. No, they're doing that stupid bullshit where they like have one hand as a cup and the other one on top of it. There's so many reasons why that's stupid besides looking ridiculous. Or what they'll do is they'll wrap their left hand, support hand, around the wrist of the other one, which does nothing to absorb the recoil, but also is going to make it fucking impossible for you to reacquire your target. What you're supposed to do is hold your hand in, like you can't see it on a podcast, but you're supposed to take the recoil with your shoulders. If you're just going and your wrist is flying everywhere, it's going to take you forever to reacquire your target. It's going to be a hell of a lot less accurate, and it's going to look retarded.
Is that why all the bad guys always miss?
That would certainly be an explanation. Every time you see them pull back the hammer of the gun with their thumb, regardless of what kind of gun it is, they always use like a 44 Magnum revolver hammer, just the biggest, loudest. Even if it's like a 9mm Beretta or some bullshit 380, it's like, oh my God, it does not make
just
that sound.
Just because it's a good sound.
Or, here's another one I saw 100 times yesterday on some show, I forget what it was, where they're like, doing one of those dramatic things where like, I'm not sure if you're the enemy, point the gun at you. Oh, but you're not really, put the gun down. Oh, but you're the enemy, and put the gun back up kind of a thing. And every time he picked up the gun to aim it at the person, it made the sound of you racking the slide.
Yeah.
Every time. Like, it doesn't make that sound. You know how, like...
You know what the best example of that is?
Stargate,
yeah.
where they cycle their guns 100 times.
Yeah, they cock their rifles and they, like... And like they do this 5-minute scene where they're like going around, and it's like there's 4 guns, and they each get cocked like 15 times.
Yeah, you know the purpose of racking the slide is to load a round in the chamber. Now, if you have gone around and you haven't expended that round, what you're doing is popping the thing back, ejecting a live round. You fucking idiot! So you're just gonna be leaving bullets all over the floor. Oh my God, it's so retarded.
But they have infinite bullets, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That is true. Oh, there was another one that
Silencers. The fact that silencers make them totally silent.
Yeah, guns are fucking loud. You've ever been near one? Yes, even a silenced gun is loud. And don't pretend that you could put like a 2-liter bottle of styrofoam shit in a thing that's gonna deafen that sound. Yeah, bullets also like well, this is a typical 9mm round. It's gonna punch through walls unless it's a hollow point. If it's a like Full Metal Jacket, solid, conical looking point, it's gonna go through walls. That's why you got to be very careful about discharging them in houses and stuff, because it's gonna go and kill your neighbor. Now, if you have a hollow point, it's basically like a flat end.
It'll splatter.
Yeah, it'll open up and we have a lot of force, but it won't just.
It does a penetrative force.
Yeah. Here's the other thing that they get dead wrong all the time that completely drives me insane. Door entries, hostage situations, they fuck them all up almost always. That usually what you're supposed to do in a proper entry is at least a 3-man team. At the very least a 3-man team. Don't ever go in by yourself. Or certainly like at the beginning of RoboCop, if you've got 2 people and you're going in there to an unknown amount of hostiles, don't split up, because what you're going to do, and oh my God, walking backwards. People, when they are looking through places, and they even do it like in Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, they're like, what the fuck? Where they walk backwards for dramatic effect, and so they end up backing up into an enemy going, like Scooby-Doo reaction. Like, what the hell is wrong with you?
No tactical training whatsoever.
You basically have one running point, the leader, the one who decides where you go, and you've got a left and a right. And you can cover every possible angle when you go, and you do this thing where you kind of rotate so you switch whose point. It's the thing that's hard to show with my hands on a podcast. But they always say, wait for backup, especially if you don't know how many people are in there. If you've got like 4 gangsters, don't go with 2 people and then split up so that you're by yourself. You can't cover 3 out of 4 of the directions you could be attacked from, and you're going to get all your limbs shot off and you turn into a cyborg, and no one wants that. Well, maybe I do. But just pretty much assume that everything they're doing is wrong when you're watching movies. And they say ignorance is bliss. I've never been on board with that. I always thought ignorance is bliss is a really stupid policy. But
well, just think about it. You would be enjoying those movies if you.
I still enjoy them. RoboCop is still a ton of fun to watch, but they're the things like I'm much happier that I know things rather than not knowing things. Even
So
in
that
the
you can
face of
scream at
that.
the television and go, "You're doing that wrong."
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a whole lot less menacing when a villain is coming and he's holding the gun sideways like a gangster would, because immediately I know he doesn't know anything about guns, and I know several easy ways to avoid getting shot by that idiot. So it's really like if I was a main character, I would know that, and I also know what guns are supposed to look like. Rather, like I could tell the difference between a fake gun and a real gun, which is very advantageous. Here's another one randomly. I was watching a show. And a guy was supposed to be a military veteran, a guy who had seen the shit and all that stuff. And what does he do? He goes to a restaurant and he sits at the front window of the restaurant with his back to the glass. You fucking idiot. That is immediately how I know you're full of shit. Because no one would ever do that. That is the most tactically disadvantageous place to go for at least two reasons. One, everyone can see you from really far away. And B, your back is fucking to glass. So something explodes, bam. You have, and the way he was sitting was also in this booth where you couldn't see the point of ingress or any of the other doors. He was sitting like, oh my God, you're such an idiot. So diarrhea for a straight year on anyone who keeps on putting these things in there, who doesn't do their own research on how guns actually function.
The thing is, I think they know. I think it's just they do it for dramatic effect because nobody else knows.
I was
There
going to say,
are
so
some
you've missed my biggest pet peeve,
which is
when somebody gets shot, how they dramatically fly back like 6 feet. Like the classic one is through a window or something like that.
Of course. I like
okay.
Which doesn't
So-
happen. Yeah.
What's the mass of a typical bullet? A few grams?
Yeah, a couple grams.
Right? All the force is put down to this tiny little point, right? Now, this goes back to equal and opposite forces. The force applied to the receiver of the bullet is the exact same as the force given to the person shooting the bullet. The difference is with the person shooting the bullet has the entire handle or the stock to distribute it across their body, right? Whereas the bullet goes in through this one little tiny point, which is why it can enter your fucking body.
And punch through if it's a standard 9mm FMJ.
Exactly. It'll go straight through you. You won't fall back. You know, you might fall down. But
you will
not
fall down and it will hurt like a
You
bitch.
are not going to get blown back by the force of it.
Yeah, you'll have people like, it's shocking, so maybe them actually jumping back because just the sheer
shock.
surprise.
Yeah,
of,
but
holy
what
shit,
you always see, especially in old westerns, is the force of them. You know, they get hit in the chest, and their chest just like flies back, and they go shooting through this window.
Yeah.
It's like
They react
no,
as if they'd been shot with a deer slug or something.
Well, in the Old West, they had much larger bullets. They were using 44
Still.
magnums. They don't leave the atmosphere, but they will go down and stay down.
well, yes, but there's a difference between going down and getting knocked back.
Yeah.
When you're talking about people getting knocked back feet,
Yeah.
in order for that
Usually
to
feet
happen,
off the ground. Yeah.
exactly, like blown out of your shoes, kind of.
It's like a Mortal Kombat 2 uppercut kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. When the dude does the splits, uppercut right to the nuts, which is, by the way, was the best move in that whole game.
Yeah.
Better than
But-
freezing someone? Come on.
Way better. Come on, uppercut
That's
to the nuts.
that's a thought for another day.
Anyway, point is, if there was enough force out of that bullet to knock you back like that, the person shooting the gun would get knocked back just as far.
Go back. Yeah, that's true because that's a very important point is absorbing the recoil in a way. There's called the isosceles position where you're supposed to hold it almost like an isosceles triangle with your two arms straight like that, and you take everything with your shoulder and it pops up and right back down. And if you practice it enough, you will end up exactly where you had your sight before. And yeah, no one does that. And oh my God! Here's another one. I was watching a Bond movie the other day. I'm sure I ranted about this somewhere, but there is a soldier, like part of some kind of paramilitary group, and he's trying to, get Bond in his sights, and he's shooting at him, right? And he's engaged in a firefight. And what does he do when he runs out of ammo in his magazine? He looks down at his magazine, pulls it out, and looks to the other magazine, and then looks at his gun, plugs it back in, cycles, and goes. Now, any kind of training at all, one of the first things you should do is be familiar with your gun enough that you can remove the magazine
without looking,
and put it in a new magazine without looking at it. Keep your eye on your target so that you can engage instead of you're going to get your ass shot. And it's like, no wonder these people can't can't hit Bond.
Yeah, moral of the story: bad guys are always improperly trained. And if you ever find yourself asking, is that really how guns behave? The answer will almost always be no.
No.
Yeah.
Almost always will be no. And they don't do anything obvious like tactical reloads or, I mean, fuck, it's ridiculous to watch it.
Yeah, they have to be accessible to the viewing audience, I guess.
Yeah.
By being as stupid as them.
But like some Die Hard 4 got some things right. They made it look like, because it was one guy with a pistol against a bunch of guys with a machine gun, and so he had to improvise, he had to do things, and he was still reloading, cycling his gun. He was doing things he was supposed to do, and it was, when it's more realistic, I think it's more interesting. I think the truth is more interesting than the fiction in many cases. Mm-hmm. So we just educate your fucking selves, and don't even get me started on like fight choreography. Holy shit. Mm-hmm. Diarrhea. Mm-hmm. Diarrhea. Oh yeah.
We'd like to thank you for joining us this week on the Church of Awesome. You have been awesome, and we have been awesome. We'd like to leave you with the gift of tongues.
Don't be a Tom Cruise zealot.
Well, this argument that you brought up, let's just put that on the shelf and not talk about it.
I get that makes sense, but no, I like the God Rainbow theory better. And you're a piece of shit.
It's like, well, I talked to Mr. Perfect Space God, and then he told me this thing. So if he's not telling you, then you're doing something wrong.
The comments made by the hosts and other participants are the opinions of the individuals and not those of any corporate entity. All data and information provided in this program is for informational purposes only. The Church of Awesome makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, currentness, suitability, or validity of any information in this program and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, or delays in this information or any losses, injuries, or damages arising from its display or use. All information is provided on an as-is basis. If you like what you've heard in today's sermon, come visit us at churchofawesome.com or follow us on Twitter at COA Podcast.